Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Liz Sanders. I'm the Communications Director for the California Department of Education. I'm very happy to be with you here this morning as we discuss SB 502, a very exciting opportunity and concept for helping our school districts use developable land that they already own in order to build workforce housing and stabilize our school communities. It is my pleasure to introduce our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, to open us this morning.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today's a great day in the conversation about how we promote affordable housing in the state. It's no secret that we've always had a supply problem in the state, and there's a huge demand because there's just not enough supply. And many of our workforce groups experience a hardship. You know, there's some 17% of teachers who only 17% are in affordable housing. And when you look at most work groups, people are spending more than 30 or 40% of their income on rent, probably upwards of 50% by the way the market has been shifting. Today we have an opportunity to talk about a solution, and that is SB 502. And that's a bill that would help school districts build affordable housing for teachers and for classified staff, and would do so without creating new costs for the state of California, would utilize existing resources that have been procured for supporting affordable housing for cities and counties, but would make school districts also eligible to use those resources and to have the ability to take care of some of the pre-development costs that are associated with building a project, dealing with all the things like understanding the value of the land and what can a property bear in terms of the number of parcels. The reality is that in California, school districts have a solution to the big problem that we are experiencing right now around the lack of affordable housing. In every county in this state, there is surplus property on school district land. More than 75,000 acres of land that is available to be developed on right now. If every school district that has surplus property built at least 15 units, we'd find ourselves having something upwards of 2 million units probably by the year 2030, which is a critical timeline and goal for building more affordable housing and building supply to meet the demand in our state. And so SB 502 is a very exciting bill in that it provides resources to school districts to do this important work for teachers and classified staff. But we think if you get to the place of building more than 2 million housing units, now you're talking about helping other workforce sectors. You could be building for teachers and classified staff and nurses and firefighters and other first responders for city employees and county employees. And so we think that SB 502 has practical application for so many different sectors. I'm honored that the author of SB 502 is a great senator, my hometown senator, by the way, Senator Arreguín, who is a champion for affordable housing and addressing homelessness, and is a courageous leader who has said, let us create a shining example for what we can do for the people of California. I'm so grateful to you, Senator, for being our partner on this. And please help me in welcoming Senator Arreguín to provide his remarks about SB 502.
Well, thank you very much, Superintendent Thurmond, for your leadership and partnership on this important issue. I want to lift up your work on addressing the issue of workforce housing for our school district employees is something you've worked on for many years. You introduced a bill when you were an assemblyman to allow for nonprofit builders and school districts to apply for funding through our state low-income housing tax credit program to make these types of projects financeable and buildable in California. And so this is building on your ongoing leadership of addressing the challenges of affordable housing for our teachers and for our workforce in our public education system in California. So thank you for your leadership. So as the superintendent framed, it's no secret that California is facing a housing affordability crisis. And this forces low and middle income people to live farther away from their place of work, especially in regions such as the Bay Area, which is where I live and represent. It's not uncommon for people to commute hours to get to work. And this is especially true for our educators and for our classified staff, who are doing incredible work, but who cannot afford the rising cost of housing, cost of living in California. The superintendent touched upon this. In 2016, 17.4% of homes were affordable to the average teacher. And I'm sure that statistic is far more stark now, given the rising costs of rents and home prices, the fact that wages for our educator and classified workforce have not kept up with the rising cost of living. Most school district employees meet the definition of being housing cost burden, meaning that they spend over 30% of their income on housing costs. And so I see this issue as critical to the state's efforts to address public education. And if we don't have teachers who can teach in our classrooms because they can't afford to live in the regions that they work in, if we can't retain teachers because of the rising costs of housing, that impacts our ability of our kids to learn, that impacts our efforts to advance education in California. We know that students are more likely to succeed when teachers are able to spend quality time working with them and providing feedback on the work. But that is impacted if the educator has to live further away from where they're teaching. So one idea that school districts have been imploring and implementing over the past several years is to look at repurposing underutilized property to create workforce housing. And I want to lift up a project that I was able to work in partnership with our school district to advance in the city of Berkeley. We're building 110 affordable homes on a parking lot of our adult school in Berkeley to provide affordable workforce housing for teachers and for classified staff. That's just one example of projects throughout the state of California. I want to lift up Daly City's Jefferson Union High School District, which recently opened up a 122-unit development for staff. The school district this year opened with 0 vacancies in that project. And that's just furthering efforts to not just attract, but to retain teachers at their school district. And there's so many other school districts that want to do this. We'll hear from one today in West Contra Costa Unified School District that would benefit from the funds that SB 502 would make available. So we've seen the success of educator workforce housing and improving retention of high quality teachers. This was only possible if the district had the resources to make this happen. And building affordable housing in California, frankly, takes too long. It's too expensive. So the more that we can do to make more resources available to make these projects happen, it's a win-win for the state. So SB 502 directly addresses this issue. It would allow school districts and other local education agencies partnering with nonprofit builders to be able to access state funds, a zero-interest loan program, to pay for pre-development work to build low and moderate income workforce housing. And when Superintendent Thurmond approached me with this idea, I was all in. I know that this is going to be a huge benefit to the state of California. School districts and county offices of education own over 75,000 acres of land across the state that could potentially be developed for housing. And the superintendent has led an effort over the past several years bringing stakeholders together, look at how we can advance the issue of addressing retention and affordability through creating housing. This is an outgrowth of his task force, one concrete way that we can get homes built now. So this is really a win-win in helping districts maximize the use of their land, improve teacher retention, support educators who are unfortunately so many experiencing housing hardships, and improve the ability for us to support our students. So excited to work with the superintendent on this bill, excited to have a broad coalition, including labor and our school district supporting this effort, and we look forward to working to achieve passage this year. Thank you. So I have the honor of bringing up Mitch Steger from the California Federation of Teachers to speak on this bill, and thank you for joining us today. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mitch Steiger. I'm with CFT. We're a union of educators and classified professionals all around California, and we're honored to be a part of this campaign. I think it's fair to say that CFT represents all kinds of education workers all across the state, and what we hear pretty consistently from all of them is how much they love the work, how much they appreciate being able to make a meaningful difference in the lives of students, and maybe more than anything else, build that sense of community in a school where they develop trust with the students, they develop the experience they need to do the job well, both certificated and classified workers, And all of that, when it works the way that it should, can do wonders for student achievement. But this issue of housing scarcity and the inability to find housing close to a school is threatening to sever that relationship, sever that community in a lot of places. When you have to drive, as was mentioned, hours to get to school or spend hours on public transportation, it starts to get really hard to maintain that motivation to do the job. You miss time with your own family. You lose time that you could be spending learning to do the job better and helping students through whatever they need help with. And over time, you really start to question it. I used to commute an hour and a half to work every day to a job that I loved and eventually couldn't do it anymore. I need to live closer to work. And it starts to cause this ripple effect that can really harm student achievement, can harm classified and certificated recruitment and retention, and the whole system starts to suffer. So it's one of the reasons we're so excited about this bill, in that we think it really offers a significant step towards solving that problem and restoring that community. When we do take away some of the obstacles that are there, when we do give these LEAs the supports that they need in order to take advantage of this really exciting idea, then we can start to repair that relationship, make it a lot more likely that these workers stay there at work. We can build on the successes that we've seen in places like Jefferson Union and learn from those and expand it throughout the state. We have run into some obstacles in this in previous years, and that's what this bill is there to do. And we think it does a lot to do that. It's a very thoughtful measure that we think can do quite a bit to improve the school system and make it that much more likely that we can keep our members excited about their jobs and in their jobs. And with that, we will turn it over to the next speaker, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mitch. I would like to welcome to the podium West Contra Costa Unified School District's Board President, Leslie Reckler. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you, Senator Arreguín. Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond, for all your work on behalf of public education. We appreciate it so much. I am so happy to be here today to tell our story. My name is Leslie Reckler. I'm president of the West Contra Costa Unified School District School Board, and we proudly serve 25,000 students in western Contra Costa County in the heart of the very, very expensive Bay Area. I'm here today in strong support of SB 502. The teacher shortage is real. Our district's teacher retention rate is under 70%. When we conduct exit surveys, many teachers express a desire to stay, but say that they simply cannot afford to live in the Bay Area. Or the commute is so long and arduous that it's easier and cheaper to work closer to home. This leads to staff turnover, teacher shortages and classroom vacancies, and disrupts the continuity and quality of education that our students deserve. SB 502 is crucial because it would dramatically reduce pre-development costs on housing projects, which certainly run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are costs school districts really cannot afford and begin with and are incurred years before the shovel hits the ground. Having access to this pool of funds will remove barriers for school districts that are looking to build workforce housing and will entice others to seriously consider such projects. Senate Bill 502 will help to ensure that educators can remain where they are needed most, supporting a stable and effective education system. Teachers are at the heart of the learning experience, and when we lose them, our students suffer. High housing costs make it difficult for teachers to live in communities like mine, leading to turnover and staffing shortages that disrupt school communities and student learning. I urge you all to support SB 502. Our teachers and our students deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Reckler, and thank you again to CFT. Thank you, Senator Arreguín. Thank you, State Superintendent Thurmond. We would now like to open it to questions. So if there are any questions from members of the press who are here, you're welcome to ask them live now. And please just let us know if you have a question that's directed to a particular speaker.
I'm curious about the governor's budget proposal. He didn't put any
Thank you, Eric. I will let Superintendent and Senator address this.
And I'd like to invite the Senator and Representative from CFT to come up, and President Reckler, if you'd like to provide any additional context. Obviously, we would like to see a better financial picture in the state, the economy being what it is. There haven't been a lot of new proposals, but what's interesting about this proposal is it doesn't ask for any new money, and that it operates off of existing funds that are available to support already cities and counties, and now we would be, through this bill, adding school district jurisdictions. There are many other housing proposals I'd like to talk with you about in regard to homelessness as well. But I want to give the Senator and others a chance if they want to also speak to that. And I would just say this proposal represents what I call a great triple bottom line benefit. First of all, it provides more housing, which is a huge benefit in and of itself. It also has the benefit, as the Senator pointed out, of helping to improve educational outcomes of our students. When teachers and staff can't live where our students are and they have to, keep moving, that churn has a negative impact on the success of our students. And so that's the double bottom line benefit. And then the triple is we're talking about building 2 million units. And imagine the impact that has on our economy, going back to where your question started. And so I'm grateful to the Senator and to CFT and to West Contra Costa. I'm grateful to our staff, Richard Barrera, who's been chairing. We have a housing work group that meets every 2 weeks and is keeping these topics fresh on how to move this forward, and our government affairs team that has been working to get the legislation together with the Senator's team. But I'll turn it over to the Senator.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fighting to restore some of the funding that the legislature had added in the state budget last year. But as the superintendent said, this is money. This is not new money. This is money the state has already has set aside through a bill. I think it was SB 2 that was passed several years ago, which created the Building Homes and Jobs Trust Fund. There's a fee that's attached on the recordation of any real estate document. A $75 fee that goes into this trust fund. That's money that goes to local governments, and that's money that's available for nonprofit builders to build affordable housing. All we're saying is to take 5% of that trust fund and make it available for local education agencies to be, and their not-for-profit partners to be able to apply for that money to be able to do the pre-development and development work to build teacher housing. There is no guaranteed funding source in the state of California currently for educator or school district workforce housing. This would be the first set aside, and this is money that's already there in a trust fund that's already being used to build affordable housing. We're just saying let's dedicate a portion of that to create workforce housing for school district employees. Yeah.
Well, I would say that there is no nexus to what is coming out of the federal government. This is, as the Senator said, a California established fund of money that is available. And there is no nexus to any executive order that might come down to impact that. Having said that, the executive orders are having a negative impact on just about everything that we do in education, and we have to pay attention to it. Starting with the issues around attendance and the governor's comments and actions around deportation consequences has a financial impact on our schools, because we're one of a handful of states that still collects revenue based on average daily attendance. And there's some estimate that California could lose upwards of $100 million when kids don't come to school because attendance is suppressed. And so we're happy to talk with you about this in further detail, but we have provided legislation in SB 48 that says that there's no role for ICE on campus and creates a 1 mile radius of protection for families within a 1 mile radius of a school for the purposes of helping our immigrant families to be supported also to protect California revenue. So in spite of what's happening on the federal government, California has created ways to be protected. And I know that the senator also has a bill that speaks to supporting our immigrant families wherever they might be in the community. And so, we will continue to be vigilant as it relates to the executive orders and the threats that are coming. We have a strategy for blocking any effort through Congress to end and abolish the Department of Education. We believe that it is very clear that the president cannot act unilaterally or by executive order or by pen to abolish the department or to pause funding. We think that the layoffs, the threatened layoffs of federal employees is so misguided, and that the president and his Secretary of Education fail to recognize the role that the U.S. Department of Education plays for every state in the nation in interpreting laws and in accessing funding for special education, for higher education, for supporting homeless students. And so we will continue to be vigilant and fight against these actions. We've been involved in the court systems, and we will continue to be involved in court systems in pushing back against these misguided attacks on public education, on Medicaid and other programs that serve Californians and those who have needs. We will continue to stand against those. We believe we're on the side of right, and we will continue to stand against these misguided actions coming out of the federal government. Oh, sure. We know that it can. We spent a lot of time in Pasadena and Altadena and other places in Los Angeles County that were impacted by the fires. Sadly, we know that educators have lost homes at a very high rate. Yeah. And we've worked with the California Federation of Teachers, the California Teachers Association, and other groups that have provided emergency funds for their members. We've worked with the community to raise private dollars. We've been able to get emergency housing for educators, food, clothes, books, resources, and most recently, through our private nonprofit, supplybank.org, we've raised another $100,000 that we intend to use to help some of the students who have become homeless as a result of the fires. And so, the disasters experienced in Southern California and other parts of our state have exacerbated what is a housing crisis and a crisis of those who can become unhoused. And we intend to work with the governor and other state agencies, our members of Congress, to get every single resource that we can to help Californians rebuild. This will be the largest rebuilding effort that I think we will ever experience in our state. Imagine losing a home completely, and you're paying a mortgage on it. Californians are going to need help from state government, from federal government, from local government, from insurance companies, as far as I'm concerned, have not done their fair share, and we have to hold them accountable to help Californians who've been paying into their companies. We're going to need foundations and business communities. And so doing what we're doing at this time gives our school districts some additional resources to move closer to being able to build affordable housing for teachers and classified staff. And I'm hopeful that we can broaden that to other sectors of the workforce.
I'll just add that, as you know, the legislature approved $2.5 billion of emergency aid to assist with the cleanup and begin the rebuilding process. Some of that was for local school districts to deal with the fire damage of school district property. We'll have to have a conversation around, Prop 2 and access to some of those funds to assist in rebuild. But that's with the facilities, with the housing. No doubt that the fires in LA have just exacerbated our state's housing crisis, which is already acute beforehand. So as we're rebuilding, this could provide a tool to ensure that we can build affordable workforce housing for those teachers that have lost their homes. And so I think it definitely should be part of the state's rebuilding efforts. Yeah, and then in addition, that's not the subject of this press conference, but there is an effort in both the Senate and the Assembly to put on the ballot next year in 2026 a $10 billion housing bond. I see that working hand in hand with SB 502 to just unlock more resources for us to build workforce housing, not just for school district employees, but other public employees in California as well.
while there are challenges ahead, California is unlike other states. We have resources to work with, and we have great leaders like the senator who, you know, he just got here, but as mayor of the city of Berkeley, he's found a way to tackle really complex issues around housing affordability. They've built more units. They've rebuilt older housing stock. They've built new housing. They found a way to reduce their numbers around residents who are unhoused. And so we have the ability to work on very complex issues. You know, we have someone like Richard Barrera, who's worked on housing in San Diego, and in his role as a school board member in San Diego Unified, they've built housing for their workforce. And so while we face challenges, California has more resources than any other state. And might I just say, we're the only state that guarantees preschool for every 3- and 4-year-old in our state. 2 meals a day, universal meals, upwards of $100 million invested for reading coaches and specialists. And this year's budget proposes to add more for reading coaches and math coaches to support our students. And so while there are many challenges facing California, we are prepared, and we have many resources to help us navigate the challenges that lie ahead. What we always say about what's happening out of the federal government is that no matter what comes out of Washington, D.C., California children deserve to have access to a great and quality education. And we're making that our focus as we continue to move forward. I'm grateful to have partners like the ones that we have in the Senator, the California Federation of Teachers, and the West Contra Costa Unified School District, where my 2 children attended. I'm grateful that we have this partnership and that together we're moving forward. And again, today is a great day to be launching SB 502 in the public. Any other questions for? Yeah. You know, there's some estimates that districts need somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 to work on the pre-development costs. You know, and so the hope is that this could amount in, what are we saying, 1,000 projects? So 125 school districts could get a grant. Thank you, Liz. And so based on those estimates, as I said, 100,000 to 200,000 per for the pre-development costs, we're estimated 125 districts per year. Thank you. Not a one time. We like that. We like ongoing programs. And do we have a unit estimate for that, for the 125 districts? Are we to be determined? We're going to come back to you with a. That's great. You heard it here first. 125 districts. If they get between $100,000 and $200,000 for pre-development, that could per year, that could ultimately lead to upwards of 100,000 units as a start. Can I get a photo op with?
Yes.
We'd love to get a photo op with all of you. I'm here for you.
Let's see if we can come up, maybe split this.
Okay.
Let's have you on this
Oh,
side.
okay. Thank you.
And then- So, this side.